Welcome. Today, we're going to deconstruct how artificial intelligence can and should function inside an organization. We're going to move past all the hype and the science fiction to give you a really practical framework for making smarter, AI-driven decisions. So let's jump right in. First things first, we have to get one foundational idea on the table. In a world full of complex algorithms and just massive data sets, it is so easy to start thinking of AI as some kind of technological magic, this unknowable black box that just spits out answers. But that view isn't just wrong, it's actually really counterproductive. The reality is, AI's core function is much more specific and, frankly, way more understandable. At its very heart, AI is a prediction machine. Its real economic value comes from this one primary skill: taking the massive amounts of information you have to generate the critical information you don't. And grasping this one single concept that AI is fundamentally a tool for prediction, that is the absolute key to unlocking its strategic value. Okay, but if AI is really just a prediction machine, well, that begs a pretty big question, doesn't it? Why are so many companies struggling so hard to make it work? Think about it. Despite all the investment, all the sky-high expectations, a startling number of AI projects just don't deliver a meaningful return. They get stuck in these endless pilot phases, they miss their targets, and that big transformation that was promised, it just never happens. So what is really going on here? What's the systemic reason for this widespread failure? Well, the problem comes down to a fundamental strategic mistake: treating AI like a bolt-on solution. What happens is organizations take a really sophisticated AI tool, and they just try to attach it to an old legacy process, hoping it's going to somehow supercharge the old way of doing things. But this approach, it's pretty much doomed from the start. I mean, you can't bolt a jet engine onto a horse-drawn cart and expect it to fly. The whole underlying system has to be re-engineered. So if that bolt-on approach is the wrong way to think, then what's the right way? Well, we need a diagnostic tool, a new mental model for looking at how we work. And that brings us to this brilliant framework from the field of strategic management. It's called the anatomy of a task. This framework, which comes from some fantastic work by researchers Agarwal, Gans, and Goldfarb, gives us a systematic way to dissect any task into its basic building blocks. By breaking down our decision-making workflows, we can see with incredible precision where AI's predictive power gives us an edge, and, just as importantly, where human thinking is still absolutely essential. The framework proposes that pretty much every single business task can be understood as a sequence of 5 distinct components. You've got input, then prediction, then judgment, then action, and finally outcome. Let's take a closer look at each piece of this pipeline. All right, let's walk through this decision pipeline step by step to really see how you can intelligently integrate AI. Every single process has to begin with input. This is the raw material, the data that fuels the entire decision engine. It's all the information, the signals, and the observations you collect from your environment. And make no mistake, the quality and breadth of this input data is a critical limiting factor for the entire system. And in a business setting, these inputs are absolutely everywhere. We're talking about transactional records from your sales system, the server logs that track customer behavior, those real-time signals coming from your supply chain, or the key performance indicators from your operations. This collection of data really represents your ground truth. It's the what we know. Next up is prediction, and this is where AI truly shines. Prediction is simply the process of using the information you have, all those inputs, to generate new information that you don't have. It's about filling in the blanks, but with powerful statistical probabilities. Forecasting future demand, identifying a fraudulent transaction, estimating a customer's churn risk. This is AI's superpower. Now, what's really key here is how this pinpoints AI's core economic contribution. The source material is crystal clear on this. AI's single greatest comparative advantage over any other technology, and that includes human cognition, is right here, in the domain of prediction. It just makes prediction cheaper, faster, and more accurate at a massive scale. And this brings us to maybe the most critical distinction in this entire framework: the huge difference between prediction and judgment. And AI is fantastic at prediction. It can forecast that a really high-value customer has a 95% probability of churning next month. Okay, that's a statistical output. But judgment, that is a uniquely human skill. Judgment is deciding what to do with that prediction. How much is it worth to us to save that customer? What level of churn risk are we as a business willing to tolerate? See, that's not a prediction problem. That's a business strategy problem, and it requires human values. So, the crucial point here is that judgment is where we apply human wisdom, context, and ethics. It's all about weighing the value of different outcomes and assessing the cost of being wrong. Is it better to accidentally flag a good transaction as fraud or to let a fraudulent one slip through? A machine can't answer that question. Humans have to be the ones to define the objectives and the trade-offs. So after the machine makes its prediction and a human applies their judgment, we arrive at action. This is the point of execution. It's where the decision gets translated from just a plan into a real, tangible intervention in the world. Resources get committed and a change is actually made. And this really illustrates the concrete outputs of the whole decision pipeline. We're talking about things like placing a purchase order based on a demand forecast, launching a special retention offer to a customer who's at risk of churning, or adjusting your inventory levels. These are all actions that are the culmination of all the steps that came before. And finally, every action produces an outcome. Did the customer actually take the retention offer? Did the new inventory level prevent you from running out of stock? But the outcome is more than just the end result. It's the beginning of a critical feedback loop. It generates new data, which then becomes the next wave of inputs, allowing the entire system to learn, adapt, and make better predictions in the future. Okay, so now that we understand this 5-part anatomy, we can finally move from just diagnosing the problem to prescribing the solution. So how do you actually get real economic value from AI? And here it is. This is the central thesis. Real, lasting value isn't created by just tacking an AI onto your old workflow. It's unlocked when you fundamentally redesign that workflow around AI's core strength, which is prediction. And that means completely re-examining the division of labor between humans and machines. So how do you actually do this redesign in practice? Well, first, you start treating data like the strategic asset it is, constantly working to improve the quality and diversity of your inputs. Second, you engineer your process so it can consume AI predictions with as little friction as possible. Third, you have to explicitly define the roles for human judgment, who makes which call and with what authority. And finally, you build automated feedback loops, making sure every outcome from every action is captured as new data to make the whole system smarter tomorrow than it is today. At the end of the day, what this framework gives you is a strategic blueprint for human-machine collaboration. It lets you look at any task and make a deliberate choice. Which parts can we fully automate? Which parts can be supported by AI to help our human experts? And which critical judgment calls must stay firmly in human hands to ensure we're accountable and strategically aligned? So this isn't just some abstract, theoretical model. It's a practical diagnostic tool. And it prompts a final essential question for you to take back with you. When you look at the workflows inside your own organization, what is the very first task that you're going to deconstruct using this 5-part anatomy?